Hello and welcome to Daily Work Remote Strategies. Today our topic is the meaning of life, and I'm Senia Maymin. Okay, so when I say the meaning of life, what do I really mean? I mean, what is the biggest, most important thing we can get done? What's the biggest, most important thing that's valuable, that's meaningful, that's important for us? So when I think about that, I think of three big things. So today I'll walk through three things that I hope will help you throughout when you are thinking about the meaning of life. And for that, I made us a fancy schmancy quick graphic. This graphic stands for the three things. So as we think about the meaning of life, we may be thinking about what do we want to accomplish in life? We may be thinking about the number 42. We may be thinking about small things, really detailed things. We might be thinking about big things, big picture, family, work, home, those kinds of things. And I invite you to think about the lens through which we measure the meaning of life. So I'll give you all three at the beginning and then go into all of them. My three are do good, that's about doing good, ask questions, and tell stories. That's it. I think life is about doing good, asking questions, and telling stories. So I'll start with do good and with those three little dots next to it. When I was, I think sometime in college, I think I was walking down one of those long paths that you have between classes. I don't exactly remember where I was, but I remember that this made a big impact on me. Previous to college, I had seen people work. My parents worked, my friends' parents worked, people worked. My first job was when I was 13 years old and I worked at a horse farm in exchange for horseback riding lessons. So people work. You'd always thought of people working. I had thought, what do I want to be when I grow up? And work had always seemed to me as the kind of thing that it's what you do and it's what could be useful for the world and it's how you can serve others. And then somebody, just one of these hi Sarah, one of these off the cuff comments that somebody made in college was, work is good for your soul. And that really stuck with me. I really like that work wasn't only about providing for your family, which it is and which is important. It wasn't only about contributing to others and serving others, which it is and which is really important, but it's also good for your soul. And that's been a nice lens for me. So when I think about the meaning of life, I think one of the most important ones is just do good. And I'll tell you why I'm even thinking about it, or why I think that's a lens, or why that's even questionable. Like, who would even question about doing good? I don't know if you've ever heard, but in some traditions, in the Jewish tradition, this happens to be true. The story is that when you die, you are only asked one question after your death. Do you know what it is? Let's see if in the comments, if you know what that question is. Is the question, were you kind to people? Is the question, did you have a family life? So let's see if you know what the question is. The question is, were you honest in your business dealings? And I really love that. So when you look back on your life, were you honest in your business dealings? And I think about that as do good, which is a little bit ironic because I come from the positive psychology world. And most of you know that positive psychology is about the study of happiness, the study of productivity, of success, of how we can do really wonderful things in the world. And yet there's been this long, long time philosophical debate about, do we want to do good or do we want to be happy? What's the ultimate aim of people? And Aristotle came down hard on the do good. So do good is the aim, it's the goal. And I agree with him. I think the goal of life is to do good. And I also want to phrase that and caveat that with, it's not, sometimes when you read about this, it may seem like social pressure to do good, or you have to do what other people think is good. I actually don't think that's the meaning of do good. So I'll kind of summarize where we are. I believe, and I love that phrase, that work is good for the soul. We might look back in our lives and think, did we deal honestly in our business practices? And when we're thinking about all that, have we done good? So I'll give you an example that you might completely disagree with. So this do good versus be happy. If the goal of life were to be happy, a lot of people could be happy. A lot of criminals could be happy. A lot of people who do really mean things could be happy. I could be happy eating snacks all day. I think I could probably be happy. I think I could feel happy doing that. Then, of course, there are different levels of happiness. So is it positive emotion? Is it engagement? Is it meaning? Is it achieving something? Is it relationships? And those are really nice. That's Martin Seligman's PERMA model. And that's really nice because it makes it more holistic. Just what is life about? But I would even say that do good is a more fundamental level of that. It's, am I doing good for the world? And am I doing what's good? So now I'm going to get back a little bit into story form. Some of you may know, those of you who know me may know that my dad, after being a mathematician and a Wall Street portfolio manager, he retired and decided to write books. Books for people like you and me, so grown-ups, but also books for kids. And some of the books for kids that he's written are this series called the Flying Fox series. The Flying Fox, Welcome to Periton, and one more called The Trial. So in this Flying Fox series, he takes on, it's like a Harry Potter, but with a female character, with Chloe as the main character. That's the closest that's the closest way of understanding this book. He takes on, in the Flying Fox, he takes on this question of what is it that we should do with respect to others? And I'm coming back to Aristotle's do good. And he actually takes down what most of us believe, which is the golden rule. He does not like the golden rule. Do unto others as you would like to have done unto you. He doesn't even like the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would like done unto them. He kind of, I know I'm giving away a little bit of the punchline, but you may not be a teen and soon you may not pick up this book for yourself. You may pick it up for your, on Amazon, you can search for my last name, Maymin, with the name Flying Fox. My dad is Zach Maymin. He says, no golden rule, no platinum rule. He says, let's simplify life and also do what is right in this world. And he said, do good, don't do bad. So what if the rule is not the golden rule or this platinum rule, but what if it's really do good and don't do bad? And that still has nuances in it. That still has topics and issues and things that are not super clear. So how do you always know what's good and what's bad? But I would say, if you're here, I'm going to hold up my Post-it. If you're thinking about your whole world and you're thinking about the meaning of life, and if I were to summarize it into do good, ask questions, and tell stories, in the do good part, if you actually think about how am I doing good, how am I not doing bad? How am I doing what's right? How am I not doing what's wrong? The more you question that, which will gently bring us to the second category, but the more you question that and you think about it, the more you can steer your way there. I see someone on the call who she and I have been talking about creating an ethics course at a business school level. So do good. And I will say that do good can sound simplistic, and I get that. But when you think about big picture things like the meaning of life, you might have some simplistic in there. Now within do good, there's something that, two other categories of do good that I want to give you before we go on to questions and stories. Within do good, I'm a coach. And so if you think about doing good, you can focus on just one or two things. So you can say, I'm going to do good at work. I'm really going to serve people, help people. That's awesome. But does it make you a holistic person? And again, it's so funny, maybe because I think in stories, and my third suggestion today is stories. I just keep coming back to my dad's books, whether it's the teen series or his book Publicani for grownups, but it's really about what is a whole person. And you can never be a whole person if you're just focused on work. We know this. You can't be a whole person if you're completely doing things at the expense of your health. So you will see, it's very subtle. You'll have to look very closely, that in this do good little icon that I've drawn, there are 3 bullet points. And what I suggest for those 3 bullet points are the things that we ask people at the end of our coaching sessions, which is, what are you doing for your health? What are you doing for your career and your actions of moving forward? And what are you doing in terms of connecting with people? And this last one I got from Eileen Schaefer. You've seen her webinars here. I really love that as a third one, and she's introduced this to us. So asking yourself in terms of doing good, am I focusing on my health, and how? Am I focusing on moving my career and my work forward? And am I focusing on connecting with people? Okay, that's the do good category. Comments, questions, disagreements, throw it at me. I'm ready for you. I feel like big as the world today. So I'll take it. That's the do good. That's part 1. Part 2, ask questions. I think asking questions is one of the biggest parts of life and one of the best things you can do in life. I love asking questions. It's actually one of my favorite things. So here's one of my stories about asking questions. When I was in high school, my friends wanted to be, I had a lot of friends who wanted to be in politics. And I don't know if that's just the high school thing or where I went to high school. I had a lot of friends who wanted to go into politics, a lot of friends who wanted to be star athletes. So people had goals. You might be surprised at what my goal was, but I really loved it. Who I wanted to be when I was in high school is I wanted to be Larry King. And I loved how he did interviews. I loved how he did interviews. I loved how he asked questions. I loved that if he had a guest on the show, he would not read the book in advance. I actually really like that. That may sound weird that I like that, but I don't do that. I love to read the book in advance, but I liked it because he was like a common person, but really just asking what's on his mind when he saw the book, when he flipped through it. So what I would do is I would come home from school, do my homework, and he had a radio show, nothing about TV or internet, of course, a radio show at midnight and at 2 a.m. And I listened to the Larry King show at midnight as I was falling asleep on the radio, the real radio. That's who I wanted to be. I really loved asking questions. So you may not be surprised that I am an executive coach and run an executive coaching company. I love questions. Probably if you had to define coaching by one or two words, it would be a partnership with someone in which you ask powerful questions. So in which you ask questions, you don't even need the word powerful. I love questions. So questions. For questions, I want to tell you two pieces of research that may incite you to ask more questions. I once asked, Laszlo Bock was in charge of people at Google, and I once had a chance to ask him a question after a talk he gave. And I said, well, how do you convince your people at Google to do things like gratitude? I mean, it's a little bit of a soft skill. How do you convince engineers and very analytical people? I was a math major undergrad, so I know what that skepticism towards soft skills can be. And he said, I show them the data. I show them the data on why gratitude is important. So let me show you the data on questions. There are two pieces of data that I want to give you. One is the question behavior link, and the other is David Cooper-Ryder and what the question entails. The question behavior link. There's a lot of amazing research on the fact that if you ask a question at point A, at point B, let's say even 3 months later, people are more likely to do that thing that you asked the question about. So if you have two groups, and one group you ask, will you buy a car in the next 3 months? And the next group you ask, what do you think of cars? The people that you ask, will you buy a car? They are more likely, when you resurvey them 3 months later, they are more likely to have bought a car than the other group. And this is weird. You are a researcher, you got them on the phone one time. It doesn't make sense that there is this question behavior link. But there is, and that's just with one question. So imagine if you're constantly asking yourself questions. And what if the questions you're asking yourselves are not, oh man, did I really forget to do that? Did I really mess this up? What if the questions you're asking yourselves, all of you, are, how can I serve people? How can I help people? How can I reach out to someone who needs reaching out to? How can I create something that I really care about? So what if you're asking yourself those questions that draw you up a little bit? All right, so first piece of data, question behavior link. Second piece of data, I love David Cooper-Ryder. You've probably heard of his appreciative inquiry. It is about asking questions that grow, that appreciate, not appreciation like we love you appreciation, but that grow, appreciate like interest. And David Cooper-Ryder has been asking questions all his life and has a format of 4 questions that he goes through. And he says the question is the seed of change. So if you want change, and if you are watching our webinars, you likely want change because we are all about behavior change. The name of our company is Silicon Valley Change, like behavior change. If you're interested in change, then it's about asking those questions. Have I convinced you? Or do you agree? So we've done do good, ask questions, and then we'll move on to telling stories, and that'll be our last one. One thing that I want to alert you to in terms of asking questions is you can have the same questions that you're asking yourself all the time, almost like a checklist. My friend Debbie really believes in this. So if you watch my webinar called High Five Prioritizing, I ask myself 5 questions. I can just run through them. How am I doing on health? How am I doing on work, on home? How am I doing on children's books? I happen to love writing children's books. And how am I doing on a big project that I'm working on? So that's it. Those are my 5. Your 5 may be different, but how do you ask yourself the same questions? All right, that's questions. Stories. I think you would be surprised if you didn't see me talking about stories. So with stories, I'm going to tell you just a couple of things. People think in stories. You and I know people think in stories. So if you want to tell people a story, you might want to tell it as a story. So here's a story I'll tell you. My 8-year-old daughter was taking an online class. I love that she was taking this class. This was a class on cleaning your room. And it was a 1 hour, 2 weeks apart, so 2 hours. And I asked her, what did you like about the class? And I thought she would tell me there were some organizing tips. It was useful. It was helpful. No, she told me 2 stories. She said the teacher told a story that when the teacher had been young, their house burned down. A terrible story, but their house burned down. And the one thought the teacher had was, I had so much extra stuff in my room. I wish I could have given it away first. I wish I had had the chance to give it away so that it wouldn't have burnt down in my house. That's a story that makes an impact on my daughter. That makes my daughter clear things away and say, can we give this to someone who's smaller than me? That's a story. And the second story, I asked my daughter, what do you like about this class? And she told me these 2 stories. And the second story is one of the girls, because these are girls in this woman's class, had a room so messy that one night she was just going to get a glass of water to the restroom, and she stepped on something that was sharp and had to go to the ER in the middle of the night, i.e. clear your floors and everything. But clearing your floors isn't a message. Telling that story is the message. So stories, that brings us to doing good, asking questions, and telling stories. And to bring all of these together, I'm gonna tell you a little story. And this will be my sort of closing story, after which I super invite you to questions. The situation is that we are all in these coronavirus times. There are also a lot of very uncomfortable things going on in the world, which are not good, and they really actually affect me greatly. It's something I care about. We're a family who has basically 2 values, family and freedom. And I don't feel that there's a lot of freedom for everybody right now, and that is frustrating. Again, to quote my dad, if even one person is a slave, then we are all slaves. His specific is, if even one person is not free, then we are all not free. So that matters to me. These are the times we're in. And in these times, it's actually kind of hard to focus. And I get that. And I have that, and you probably have that, and that's real. So in these times, and I'm telling you this story like the format that I had described before, the SARI story. So 4 things: situation, action, result. Interesting thing. The situation is, it's tough. Coronavirus, lots of bad things. It's tough. And specifically, that non-focusing thing, which is very typical for all of us, is tricky because it's real. So the action I took is I thought about, when can I focus? When am I not at work? When am I not responding to emails? When do I not need to make sure the kids are getting on their Zoom calls? And my answer was Saturday and Sunday from 6 to 8 a.m. I love that time. No emails come in, I'm working. So my action that I took is I work in those times, and I love it. I really, really love it. The result is that I've been able to think more big picture and ask those questions that I'm telling you about. And the really interesting thing is, because of that, I'm making little videos, I'm doing little things, but it takes me out of that coronavirus funk. So that's my story about how to take this situation, but actually just find, what's my tweak? What's the little tweak around it? So as I end, I want to suggest to you that doing good by asking about our health, what we're doing on work, and what we're doing on connecting with people, that asking questions and that telling stories could make you feel very holistic and very meaningful. Thank you very much.